Clearing our fuzzy heads from drinking Belgian beers in Carew the night before, we headed south from Carmarthen along Route 4 of the National Cycle Network. Well, except for a bit of a diversion to call at some of the old pubs of Llandefeilog. Both routes head to Ferryside, from where one hugs the Afon Twy. Clearing the retail park south of the town, the road rises gradually, then drops down into Croesyceiliog, where the former New Inn stands close to the bridge across a tributary to the Twy. This small settlement was part of the parish of Llandefeilog. In the 1860s, the New Inn was kept by the shoemaker John Rees. Following his death in 1881, his wife Mary continued to run the beer house. There was an extremely violent fight outside the pub that led to the death of the weaver David Walters. David Rees and James Davies were subsequently charged with unlawfully killing him, but both men walked free from court. The tradition of shoemaking at the New Inn was continued by John Davies when the licence of the beer house was transferred from David Owen to John Davies in October 1900. A local resident for some 2 decades, he moved into the property with his wife Mary and 6 children. Also living with the family was Robert Hatcher, who was apprenticed to the shoemaker. Pretty handy then if you wanted to combine some new footwear with a glass of ale or two. As licensee, John Davies was still making shoes when the question of redundancy emerged in the early 1920s, a time when the Red Cow Inn was also being considered by the magistrates. Some 2.5 kilometres to the south, almost opposite the lane to Castell Twy, stands the Rama Independent Chapel. A date stone informs the visitor that the old chapel was erected in 1840 and rebuilt in 1871. The simple Gothic-style building was designed by renowned chapel architect and minister Thomas of Landor near Swansea. There is little remaining of the old Castell Twy, so we forged on. A little further south at the Fork Junction stands the former Upland Arms, a fully licensed house that doffed its cap to the Georgian mansion and estate a little to the northwest. Mind you, the roadside tavern was formerly known as Raymond Lodge, and was recorded as such in this extract from the 1871 census, when David and Anne Daniels were the innkeepers. The building was known as Raymond Lodge in the early 1830s, when the Carmarthenshire Harriers met on Mondays at the house. The premises was owned by the family residing at the mansion. In the second half of the 19th century, Upland House was occupied by Edward Morris Davies, a Justice of the Peace and High Sheriff for the county. In October 1832, the landlord of Raymond Lodge, along with his family, rushed to render assistance to a group travelling along the road in a carriage after the iron band of a wheel snapped and upended the vehicle, throwing the occupants into a ditch. The landlord in question was possibly David Meredith, as he was recorded as publican during the following January. The inn sign of the house seems to have changed in the early 1870s and was listed as the Upland Arms by the winter of 1872, when notices for fox hunting meetings were published in the press. Possibly as a result of the failing health and ultimately the death of Edward Morris Davies in 1900, the Upland Arms, along with 22 acres of land, was operated by Buckley's Brewery Limited. In September 1900, they were seeking a tenant for the business. The freehold of the property remained with the Davies family up until its closure in 1920. The licence house was referred for compensation at the Carmarthen County Petty Sessions held in March of that year. The published report showed that the Upland Arms was in a poor state of repair and offered no stabling or accommodation. A little further on there was, until in recent years, a petrol station at Star Forge. As the road rises, on the right-hand side is Cross Inn Cottage, the name of which suggests a former public house. However, the house was recorded as Cross Inn, that's C-R-O-S-S-I-N, in Census service and occupied by farm labourers. From the main road we dropped down into Llandefeilog to have a mooch at the church dedicated to St Maelog, a limestone and old red sandstone rubble building with medieval origins when it belonged to the deanery of Kidwelly. The chancel is thought to date to the 13th century, and the nave and transepts being of the following century. The building fell into disrepair before a restoration during the 1820s. As was the case throughout the land, the Victorians altered the place with a comprehensive restoration in the 1860s to the designs of the semi-retired Richard Kirk Penson, who specialised in Gothic revival projects. Apart from the connection to the old vicarage, there were two paths to and from the church, and both headed to two taverns. So when the vicar had stopped droning on, locals could nip into the Red Lion or the Rose and Crown Inn. Though closed these days, the last orders being called in the 1980s, the former Rose and Crown still stands on the corner of the north-south axis footpath. The building was once part of a farm holding and operated by the Davies family in the late Victorian period. Siblings Thomas and Sarah Davies were running the business, being succeeded by their niece Catherine towards the end of the 19th century. She died at the pub in September 1908. The Red Lion, a pub still serving beer, hooray, is just over 100 metres from the Rose and Crown. This tavern was also part of a farming enterprise in former times. In the Edwardian period, some 42 acres of land formed part of the property. This was for many years run by John and Hannah Walters. The current Red Lion has been run by 3 generations of the same family. We were too early to call in, but they do have a couple of real ales, and if you're lucky, you may find Jemima's Pitchfork by the Glamorgan Brewing Company at the servery. We should have perhaps extended our ride on the previous day, because they also offer bed and breakfast accommodation and serve food produced by Hay Vegan. A legacy of its days as a farm, the function room of the Red Lion Inn was once a byre. Between the two pubs is the old village pump, housed in a shelter built to celebrate Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee. Prior to this, the villagers took their water from the stream within the churchyard. The pump was the main supply of water until the post-war years, when Llandefeilog was connected to the water mains. With not too much time to have a good mooch around the village, we headed back up the hill to head towards Ferryside. Thanks for viewing and listening to my blurb. If you enjoyed the video, please give a thumbs up. Post your comments below if you have more info or a question. If you think these video clips rock, you can also subscribe to the channel.